Want to start off the show, obviously, by acknowledging the horrible, tragic, heartbreaking situation going on in Minneapolis this morning at the Catholic school. Still getting a lot of information coming in. We want to be very careful about what we discuss and what we report, but our hearts go out to that entire community, certainly the families, and we're praying for every single person involved. It's just a tragic and horrible situation. You know, the initial reaction for a lot of people is to make this political. I hope that we can all avoid that, especially as we grieve for the families and get more information. But joining me now to weigh in on what we know so far and so much more, the host of the Ruthless Podcast, Josh Michael John, and Comfortably Smug, of course. Josh, I want to start with you. Obviously, we're all just getting information, and social media is going wild with, we know the suspect, we know the motivation. It feels a little early to put that out right now, given we don't have official confirmation. But what's your, first takeaway with this horrible news?
Yeah, thanks, Tomi. And I appreciate that you started with that sort of admonition that we don't know enough, and, we will in the upcoming days, and there'll be enough for all of us to sort of comprehend what's happened here. I'm from the area. I have friends whose family go to that school, and it's obviously the darkest, the worst, most unimaginable thing as a parent that you could ever think of. And so the one thing I hate more than anything is when people jump to political conclusions. I mean, I saw a statement from Chuck Schumer about gun violence. I saw all these Democrats talking about, all their next effort on Second Amendment rights and everything else. It's a human tragedy, the likes of which it's hard to comprehend in many ways. And I know there are ways that we could better deal with all this, but in the next 15 minutes, 20 minutes after this thing happens, that's not the time. Like, we got to deal with the victims. We got to deal with this tragedy. We got to deal with the families. We got to deal with the loss of life. I got to support those people, obviously. But then, the bigger picture is the society. And how does this happen? And, it's deeply personal for me. But again, anything that happens in a school anywhere in America is something that I think every parent thinks about a lot.
Yeah, I was really taken aback watching our Fox News coverage this morning and seeing all these little kids come out of the school with their families, and they just look so confused. And I just can't imagine what it's like for them. I mean, this is their first week back to school. This was their first mass that they were attending. And, the mayor, regardless of how you feel about Minneapolis's mayor, I'm sure none of us are a giant fan of his, but, he made the comment this morning in the press conference that, thoughts and prayers, well, these kids were literally praying. And I don't know if he meant that to be a dig at thoughts and prayers or, what he was trying to say there. I still think thoughts and prayers are important. Smug, I want to ask you, I sit here in Nashville, Tennessee. We don't want to jump to any conclusions, but the information we've been given so far, especially given that this appeared to be a pretty targeted attack on a Catholic school and kids, feels a lot like what happened here in Nashville at the Covenant School a few years back. And people are drawing similar conclusions here. And again, we don't want to speculate, but it's kind of hard not to be like, wow, this feels a little similar.
It does. And I think that was, to me, initially, when I first heard the horrible news, one of the most troubling things is how it feels like there's become a pattern of Christians specifically being targeted, and how it feels like for well over the past decade now, the left, it feels like, has been pushing this messaging about anti-Christian, and how even mocking the phrase thoughts and prayers, which is probably the greatest act a human could do for another, is to appeal to God on their behalf, even mocking that act. So, I mean, the second the shock wore off of this happening, I thought initially completely the same way you did of how this seems to mirror what happened in Nashville. And I think a lot of the reason there is so much speculation and instant reaction online is there was a feeling that we don't know enough about what happened in Nashville. And is there a reason for that? Is the truth being kept from us of what specifically happened in Nashville? And how it's easy to politicize these acts when it feels like, oh, if the media can classify, a monster involved in a shooting as right wing, it feels like, we know their social security in 30 minutes. But if it feels like the shooter is motivated by, left-wing ideology, well, it's a mystery and we'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomi, if I could add something real quick, I think, we have a couple of problems when it comes to these school shootings. Number one, huge mental health crisis in this country. We haven't fully gotten our hands around. And I think the other thing is we need to reallocate resources with our investigative bodies like the FBI. Maybe they should spend less time, chasing down parents who show up at school boards in Loudoun County or trying to lock up, pro-life activists in front of abortion clinics who are praying the rosary.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you make. And the one thing that I do know with this FBI under Kash Patel is that we will hopefully not have another Nashville manifesto situation where we won't know the motivation. And again, there's a lot of people already, we all exist in a social media world, and there's a lot of people that we both, we all know and follow that are already putting out the information on this person. I don't want to speculate on this person because we don't have official confirmation, but I will say this. I don't care what they're motivated by. Like, I want to know. And that's what really struck me in the aftermath of Nashville in particular, is that we had the manifesto and it was hidden from us for so long. We got little bits and pieces that were leaked out, and we figured out that what this person was trying to accomplish. We figured, the leanings of this person out through little leaks, but we never got like official, like, hey, this person was doing this for this reason. And I don't care what the reason is or who they side with or who they voted for. I think people just want to know, because that's how moving forward you can protect some of these soft targets, like a school or a church, or in this case, a church and school. It feels like we kind of need to know these things. If there's a group of people in this country that's targeting this type of environment, maybe don't hide it from us because it doesn't fit the narrative. And I think that's why people are really looking at this and thinking, it feels like Nashville. Josh, what's your take on it?
Yeah, Johnny, I don't know if you've got some thoughts, but...
Yeah, I mean, so Tomi, I'll tell you, one of my wife's good friends lost a child at Covenant School. And wow. the tragedy that happened there is something that just they still haven't completely recovered from. You know this, you live there, and there is no amount of time in Minneapolis now that will let people overcome the tragedy of losing a child. And I'll tell you I've got kids, and as a dad, it really, really makes you angry, because it's like, how in the world could something like this happen? You see it happening in another city and you think, okay, well, law enforcement, everybody is doing everything they can to make sure that they're protecting our kids in our neighborhood. And then all of a sudden it pops up in Minneapolis. And for parents, speaking specifically for fathers, I know it makes them very, very angry. And so I would suspect that not only are people in mourning right now, but I would also bet you that there are a lot of dads in Minneapolis who feel the exact same way as a lot of dads who live in Nashville, who want answers and want this to stop.
And from all the initial reporting that we're getting from the press conference that just concluded not too long ago, they're saying that this person sprayed through the window. And so when you think about it, it's like we all talk about what can be done to fortify some of these soft targets. But I, for the life of me, can't really think of what you do in any situation if someone's going to spray bullets through a window. I mean, I can't think. I guess if you have resource officers or security around the perimeter, that's certainly a deterrent. They talked about that in the case of Nashville, that if there would have been somebody outside, that perhaps this person would have thought it's not worth it. I'm not going to accomplish my goal. So I guess we could talk about that. But in any situation, if someone's going to spray bullets through a window, I don't even know what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't stop evil in any. I mean, look, it always spawns a gun debate on the left, which I find so counterproductive for those of us who grew up anywhere other than an urban epicenter in the upper Northeast. It doesn't solve the problem. I mean, the issue is the evil problem. And understanding who these people are. There are some cases where there are people who should have been watched and cared for and given mental health services. There are other people who are, lone wolves, hard to figure out. And that's part of being society, is that there's there are horrible people out there, but I think we got to do a better job one way or another on the school front.
Right.
Because there's not a single parent I know, and I drop my kids off at school not dissimilar from the school in Minneapolis this morning, and there is something that goes through your mind as a dad about that, you know, and we got to stop. That's got to end. And I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I do think they're all the above solution in terms of the fortification and making sure. I don't want my kids to go to school in a penitentiary at all, but I do want to make sure that there is some protection. And, you know, I'm comfortable with what, you know, my kids' school have talked about on that, but there's so many that don't. And you got to be, I mean, we saw the Uvalde situation, for example. Perfect example of something that was just not done right, both from a law enforcement standpoint and a school security standpoint and everything else. Everybody needs to put that stuff top of mind. But then you also need to, look, we can't be so disconnected as a neighborhood and a community as to not recognize, you know, if the early reports about this person are true and they had all kinds of manifestos and whatnot. If there's somebody that has something like that going on, surely there's somebody who knows them. There's a parent, there's a brother, there's a sister, there's somebody in the community that knows something is going on.
Well, and usually we're getting information that this person, you know, this is police information. They're in their early 20s. And so when you hear about somebody in their early 20s, it's like, what happened in this person's life up to this point that made them so angry that they wanted to go mow down students at a Catholic school? Like there's something else there, right? And so we have a discussion about mental health, but I'm wondering just from all of you guys, I even heard Paul Morrow this morning on Fox News say, hey, we need to maybe take a second look at red flag laws. And I got to be honest with all of you, like I get conflicted about that discussion because I totally understand, like if you've got somebody that's got some serious disturbances, I understand the need to go in and, you know, do something about it before that person gets a hold of a firearm and does something like this. But then the Second Amendment part of me goes, well, you have red flag laws, it's going to be abused. So somebody's going to say, oh, my ex-boyfriend, I'm going to, you know, say he's crazy. And it's just going to be kind of a retribution because I don't like this person. So I'm wondering if any of you have strong thoughts on that. Is that something that we need to take a look at? Or is the Second Amendment issue, does that kind of override the concern here?
Yeah, personally, Tomi, I'm against all red flag laws. I think it's unconstitutional. And I think you should have to, you know, go into a court of law and give that person an opportunity to defend themselves before you take away their rights before they have that opportunity.
Which, by the way, should be pursued.
Yeah.
I mean, that point that he just made is an important point. You should pursue taking away someone's gun rights. If that's what, you know, if you have somebody that you suspect could be a mental health hazard,
right,
and somebody who seeks to harm other people, that should be an avenue that's pursued at a very significant level. You know, like pre-flagging people is problematic, right? And this is the debate that's gone on forever. But it seems to me that an act of evil, regardless of whether it's a gun or a bomb, or it's a knife, or it's just simply physically harming someone, is going to happen when you have people like this alleged suspect here that has a clear mental health issue. And the left always attacks the wrong problem.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just feel like, you know, red flag laws try to turn into a gun grab on the premise that the problem is the guns and not these individuals and not the enforcement that we have in place. We have the resources in place to make sure that our churches, our schools are safe. These are places that, you know, you look at the budgets that have been given to schools, especially in the wake of COVID, the amount of money that was just shoveled up and eaten by teachers' unions that we taxpayers gave towards schools that could easily provide one law enforcement officer. I mean, like you'd mentioned earlier, the visibility matters tremendously. You can look here in Washington, D.C., the effect that having more police out on the streets, that having National Guard out on the streets has done. Almost 2 weeks without a
one.
I mean, it is incredible. Like we're 12 days. I know 12 days, which is just tremendous. It's unbelievable. And then even walking around in D.C., you don't see the same like element of just criminality of it's okay, you can sell drugs out in the open, right in an intersection, a busy intersection in the middle of the day. That's over because now you see, okay, there's police officers. We have the rule of law. You can't be crazy around here.
Yeah, and I think what Smug was hitting on is a very important point. We have a crime problem in this country, particularly in major cities, and it has gone unchecked under the past 4 years when Biden was in charge. Obviously, President Trump is taking a very different approach to that, and hopefully more cities adopt his approach to how he's handling Washington, D.C. But the fact of the matter is we do have a crime problem in this country, and Democrats are more interested in the criminal than they are in the victim. And we have to shift that. We have to shift that focus back to what it should be on, preventing violent crime from happening to anybody under any circumstances. A tragic situation like we saw in this school, or somebody who's just doing their normal course of life on a weekend, trying to go to the city, trying to have fun with their family, and then crime exists. Like, we have to have a national crackdown on crime, and we can't just, I don't think you can just take one situation or another. I think it's an epidemic.
You know what I think is so interesting as we're going to, obviously this discussion is going to continue, and it's going to be, on the one side, you're going to have the right saying this person's got mental health issues, maybe they're motivated by something else. And then, the other side's going to say, well, this is about guns. But what's so crazy to me bringing up the crime and the culture of lawlessness is that the left, when they're dealing with people, they're all for red flag laws. Like, they're fine with taking firearms away from law-abiding Americans, without due process. They're totally fine with that. But what they're not fine with is when you've got somebody who's committed crimes, keeping them in jail. They don't want to do that. They want mental health diversion. So when I hear the left say we want mental health diversion, we don't want to lock up people for their mental health, it's like, but you'll take somebody's gun away without due process. But then when someone's actually done something, they're doing drugs or they're committing crimes or they're carjacking people or they're mugging people, they go, wait, though, but like, we don't want to put those people behind bars because that would be mean and that would be racist. So I don't understand. It's like they don't want anybody to be locked up, but they want to take everybody's guns. And I just don't understand how they can reckon with that.
So there's a prime example of this that unfortunately recently happened in Charlotte, North Carolina, where you had a woman who was by a man who'd been known by police and in the community as being homeless, of being unhinged, of committing past crimes. And then he this woman. And the first reaction, I was stunned. You had the Charlotte newspaper saying this was an unhoused person who perhaps did not receive the resources that the community didn't get the resource it needed, which would have been him in jail. Again, I have to go back to the example in DC where during the day you would feel unsafe walking blocks from the White House because there's homeless people on drugs who have a history of assaulting people, being unhinged and violent.
This is not Minority Report.
Nope.
This is not something that we're going in with no education about. That you're just sort of like taking people off the streets before they commit a random act of violence. These are people who are known criminals.
Bingo.
And they're out there, whether it's the cashless bail, which Trump eliminated this week with an executive order, or whether it's a lack of prosecution or a downgrading of prosecution where people don't serve any real time. It has been a path that the left has pursued when it comes to violent crime for a very long time. Now, I'm not saying that is indicative of where we're at. I don't know the things that surround this whole shooting in Minneapolis, but that's a problem. And that's what the American people are crying out to try to solve. And it's astonishing to me that we're even having a debate about it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that our culture we have a very gracious, generous culture. The Americans are the most forgiving people on the planet. But I will tell you that I think that the fear of being called mean is one of the worst things that has happened to men in this country. And if being called mean is the price I have to pay so that I don't open up my text message to find out some lunatic has shot at my child's school, call me mean every single day. I think that men need to take this back right now.
Yeah.
I really do.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's like, well, we don't want to offend anybody. And if they're unhoused people and it's unfair. And then you've got Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson not only skirting the question about getting more police officers, even if the federal government was willing to pay for it, he still wouldn't answer on that point. But then he was also talking about how, they're just going after the people who are low income. And that's what this would be. If Trump cracked down on crime in Chicago, it would just be going after black and brown people and poor people. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's those people that are also being impacted by the crime, right? Like the decent people who are low income and black and brown, they're the ones that are putting up with this. And then you've got a completely different situation in Minneapolis. By all accounts, it's like a suburb, it's a Catholic school. But then you've got the south side of Chicago. And we're kind of realizing today that maybe those two places aren't so different, and having more security and more presence of law enforcement is just great, just all things considered. And then I think about Minneapolis too, and I think about the fact that they have this mayoral race, and I don't like any of the options, right? But I'm thinking to myself, you got Minneapolis PD that's already been browbeat because of George Floyd in 2020. They're already under-resourced. There was some reporting locally that because of the other shootings going on in Minneapolis, that they were kind of under stress with dealing with this because they had other violent crimes that they had to deal with. And people don't want to sign up to do that job in Minnesota because of, the summer of love. So this is just something that the left does not want to acknowledge at all.
No, I mean, they really don't care about the victims of violent crime. You were mentioning earlier DC, and that, maybe it's black and brown people who are also the victims of all of these crimes. And maybe they like that Donald Trump is cracking down on crime in Washington, D.C. I have a stat for you. 96% of the victims of homicides in Washington, D.C. are black. 96% are also the suspects in those homicides, right? And so, you can't be a black leader in Washington, D.C. and look at those stats and be like, Donald Trump's a racist for trying to protect these communities that desperately need it. Very, very obviously.
So wild. I want to turn to some other news that I really want to get y'all's take on. There was something the other night that I saw on Laura Ingraham that raised my eyebrow a little bit. I think we have to call balls and strikes as maybe Trump supporters and conservatives. But Laura brought up something that I thought was really important, and that was, the influence of Chinese students at our American universities. I want to play the clip, and I'm very interested in y'all's reaction.
An issue, Mr. Secretary, for I think the base of the Republican Party, certainly for the Ingraham angle for many, many years, conservatives, is this idea of foreign students coming to the United States and taking spots that would normally be, obviously open to American students. The president addressed this issue as part of the Chinese trade deal, which might be in the offing. Watch.
We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students, or we're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow, it's very important, 600,000 students. It's very important.
Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, how is allowing 600,000 students from the communist country of China putting America first?
Well, the president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top. All the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump, looking at higher education and saying,
but why are you
until we
Harvard?
modify that.
So I want to give you all my reaction. When I heard the explanation there, I thought, wow, it kind of sounds like the leftist argument for illegal aliens. Like, we must have cheap labor, otherwise our businesses will close. So that bothered me a little bit. I understand the rationale. I'm not saying we shouldn't have any foreign students, but damn, 600,000? That's edging up close to the population of my home state of South Dakota. So I'm a little like, do we really need that many Chinese communist students going to our universities? I don't know.
Yeah, I was extremely confused when I heard Secretary Lutnick on that, when he said that, we would have 600,000 seats available at the top universities for American students, and that the bottom 15% of universities would go out of business. I was like, how do we make that happen? I will vote for that tomorrow. This sounds like a lot of problems getting solved all at once. The number of concerns that we have from communist China that President Trump has already addressed. He's made business tough for them. the tariffs have been having an impact on China. China's on notice from this president, but we know that there is an extensive program that China is conducting here within the United States of surveillance, of stealing intellectual property, of having students placed at these universities specifically to spy, of buying land in the United States near military bases so that they could spy. I remember the days after, last year when Ukraine conducted that attack where they had drones hidden in boxcars and they were placed inside of Russia and all of them flew out at once and they attacked Russian military base. So many foreign policy experts said that could easily happen here in the U.S. with China because they already have land right next to our military bases. And we know China's producing a ton of drones and they're stealing a lot of technology here from the U.S. I need someone to explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old, what benefit we have from educating 500,000 communists in the United States each year, and why it's good that those seats are being given to them and not to American students who the stats on what Gen Z is going through right now in the job market, trying to secure a job. You're looking at 50% unemployment for recent grads from college. I want all of that to be addressed.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's America first, and I don't think you can pick and choose. So that rationale kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, I think that there are plenty of Americans that would take those spots. And to your point, Smug, about maybe some of these universities would have to close or some of these colleges, you know, maybe that's not a horrible thing. Like, if they're underserving, perhaps they don't need to be operational. You know,
well, Tomi, it accepts the left's argument at some level that universities and colleges are an industry in this country.
Yeah.
They're not, and they never were supposed to be. I mean, you can obviously pay for an education one way or another, but what the left has tried to do is create an industry that is entirely subsidized by the American taxpayer. Rewind the tape a couple of years where you had like the government and your taxpayers being entirely on the hook for the education of everybody in this country, except for the fact that they're not reducing tuition prices at all. Right? This is what the left has tried to do. The institutional capture of our higher education in this country is complete on the left side. The question is whether you subsidize it as an American taxpayer. And so the idea that somehow they're going to be in trouble by not having foreign students, I don't care if they're from China or anywhere else, admitted into the United States is crazy to me. Like, I don't give a shit. You just, fine. That's great. Until you can make it a public service at any one level. 50% of recent college grads aren't getting.
Also, how about this? How about they balance their books on those huge endowments they're always bragging about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's right. But I think the other piece of this that I am sensitive to at some level, which is in a totally isolationist view, where you don't have any meaningful cultural relationship with countries like China, also breeds a real significant problem. That does not mean you need 600,000 students over here. But the idea that you just are completely separated from two countries, that breeds a level of resentment at some level when you're talking about two world superpowers that is not good. It's not good. And I am sensitive at some point to what President Trump is talking about, and that he's trying to work out these cataclysmic trade deals, national security components as it relates to Russia and Ukraine and Chinese alliance with Russia in that fight. We're talking about energy deal, all these other things. Like, he's probably not in a situation where he's super pumped about throwing a thumb in anyone's eye. Could that have related to his answer on that? I don't know. I mean, only he knows, but he's somebody who takes all pieces of the argument, holds it to himself for leverage components, and then executes upon it effectively. And so I reserve judgment for his comments and Lutnick's comments until I see the ultimate pathway as to where we're in with the tariff discussion, the national security, and everything else.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess it's just the explanation that I found a little bit icky. Like, oh, yeah, we can't. We got to have the foreign students. You know, if we don't, then some of these colleges are going to close. And I'm thinking, you know, but you say the same thing. The left says the same thing about the illegal aliens. We must need them. Americans won't do the job. I don't know. I don't like that answer. Here's somebody else that I think is I don't know, unlikable to his very core, although he's really trying to be. And I'm talking about Eric Swalwell. Now, I have a couple. I have a couple of clips.
Speaking of Chinese,
yeah, no kidding, right? Thinking, yeah, perfect segue into this. He's been doing these little videos. I don't know if he does them to make it cringeworthy, but here he was doing a little burger skit the other day. I'll play it for you. Nice. Try not to lose your lunch.
Yep, that's fine.
Great. Hey, Congressman. Welcome back.
Going? Hey, thanks.
We left a burger on your desk from the lunch party.
Oh, great. Thank you.
No problem.
By the way, who's the agriculture secretary? You know, the person in charge of beef inspections?
That would be Brooke Rollins.
Has she ever worked in agriculture before?
No, sir.
I mean, that is just ridiculous. Like Eric Swalwell or anybody on his staff is a farmer. Yeah. I actually talked to Brooke Rollins yesterday, and this is a woman who grew up in the FFA. This is one of the smartest women and most accomplished women who is leading our government and making dramatic changes and improvements in the bureaucracy. She has worked to bring down egg prices. She is removing DEI, which is just absolutely slaughtered that department because people were getting jobs because of what they looked like, not because of whether they could actually do their job. And she is, I'm telling you, she is maybe the best secretary of that department we've had in a very long time.
And Johnny, just to be clear, I'm not aware of any allegations of her taking dates with potential Chinese espionage agents.
Right.
So that meant you could see where that would pose a problem with oversight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think our buddy Swalwell there, he just likes to make these cutesy little videos. He's done a lot of them. And I can't tell if he's in on the joke, that he's making fun of the videos because they're so cringy and maybe that's the point, or if he really thinks that they're these bad videos. I'm not entirely sure, but he keeps doing them and he keeps putting them out there. And I don't know if he's positioning himself to maybe run for president again. He's going to have to compete with, of course, Gavin Newsom on that front, who's also cringeworthy in his own right. But I want to go to California now because not only do you have Gavin Newsom, you've got Karen Bass, and I want to get your reaction. She was asked about doing town halls, and this was her response as to why she doesn't like to do them.
And what I used to do is I used to do town halls all the time. And I love that public engagement. Town halls are a little more difficult now, though, not having anything to do with this year, but just having to do with the nature of public discourse now.
To me, that sounds like I don't want to have to answer for the fact that I was in Ghana when the wildfires broke out. And I don't also want to have to answer for the fact that nobody's been able to really rebuild in the Palisades and other areas. So I think she's the dumbest of the dumb, to be honest with you guys. I don't think that there is a worse mayor, and there are a lot of really bad ones. But I think that she might actually be the dumbest.
Yeah. I think that's, I don't know if they're dumb. I mean, that's a
They're really competing for that
Chicago cat is not, I mean,
he's dumb, but
heavy competition.
She is real
That dude
dumb.
is right up there. But I will say, we talk about this a lot on the show. In California, when you have a state, and particularly in LA, where it's absolutely dominated by progressive Democrats, there's a level of competition there that they're so insulated from that they never actually do their job, right? You talk about this a lot, Smut.
Yeah, just like Holmes mentioned, when you have states or cities that are completely single party dominated, it becomes a real problem. And California is a prime example of this, where you look at the people who become statewide politicians, like the mayor of LA, they're part of this Democrat machine where they've never had to develop the skills to answer to voters. They're just who got tapped to be next in line to move up. Kamala Harris, she never won an election where it was competitive. The one time she had a competitive election, she got smoked and lost every swing state.
They never encounter anybody that disagrees with them.
When she ran for Senate, I remember in her debate, her opposition candidate, another Democrat, like her big moment in the debate was dabbing in the debate.
I remember.
That was the second best candidate they could put up on stage, Tommy.
Ridiculous.
It's so embarrassing. Well, and I think it's the same situation when you've got areas like with AOC. It's like these people are able to say such stupid things because they really don't have competition, and people just keep electing them. And, you got the situation with New York City. They're about to make a huge mistake too. And I don't know. I guess I want to get your opinion on this as you guys are in D.C. and I'm here in Tennessee, a great, wonderful red state. I often tell people, I understand you have to live where you work, and I understand that there are reasons that people live in D.C. or New York City or Los Angeles, right? But for me, I often hear, we can't leave, we got to fight the good fight. And I remind people, you might be fighting, and it's valiant that you're doing it, but especially in places like Los Angeles and New York City, I don't know how much fight you can put up because the people just keep voting Democrat. And I'm kind of at some point, do you want to save yourselves and your families? And do you want to come to a great red state where you can breathe and live? Yeah. So, this is, for me personally, something that I myself experienced. I used to work on campaigns in New York City, and I got appointed to the Board of Elections in New York City. And I actually led the effort for the first time in the history of New York City. We had an election that I got to oversee the poll sites, and we had 50% of the poll workers Republican, 50% of the poll workers Democrat. That was the first time it ever happened. There were situations in previous elections where on primary days, you'd have a poll site with 100% Democrat workers. A Republican voter would enter and they'd say, no, this is a Democrat poll site. You have to find your own. Now, it was frequently an elderly voter who it took a lot of effort for them to walk down to the poll site. They're going home and they're not voting. So this was a tremendous problem to begin with. But the specific issue right now that New York City faces with Zohran Mamdani is almost beyond an existential problem. Mm-hmm. It occurred to me the other day that if Zohran Mamdani wins, he's going to be the mayor of New York City overseeing the 25th anniversary memorial of 9/11. A guy who said globalize the Intifada is going to be down there overseeing us remembering those unfortunate people who were on that day and the heroes who went to try and save them. Globalized Intifada is going to be there overseeing it. That's I could not conceive of a situation where that's acceptable for any New Yorker. I remember the 10th anniversary memorial, what a solemn day that is. And we were always saying we will never forget. I can't think of a greater example of forgetting all that we lost that day than having Zohran Mamdani oversee it. It's unacceptable.
I do think, Tomi, and these guys are going to make fun of me and say that I'm going soft on Democrats. For
yes. What I'm here we go. Here we go. We love this.
But I do think there's a division within their party. And I do think that there are hard left Democrats who run these blue cities. And then there are sort of these older mainline Democrats who come from states that Trump won. And the reason why I say this is because I did a panel, and I will not with a Democrat. I was a Republican. This other guy is an accomplished Dem consultant. And the one thing that he said is the takeaway on the panel when somebody asked, what should Democrats do differently? He said, we need to come to terms with the fact that we cannot run cities. If you look at San Francisco, if you look at Chicago, those places are absolute disasters. And until we're honest with ourselves that our approach to being in government doesn't work for people, we're not going to win.
Interesting.
I think the problem there, though, Tom, because I think you're totally right, Ashbrook, is these Dem cities have been entirely captured by the Democrat machine. And we've said on the show before, when you look at USAID and you see this trough that all these little piggies are at constantly taking their grants and all of this sort of stuff to do nothing, right? That there's there's a hierarchy.
Cottage industry.
Yeah, it's a cottage industry. This liberal hierarchy has set up all of these 501c4, 501c3 organizations that profit from a system of failure.
We had Zeldin on the show when he broke his big news, and he was talking about how they found $20 billion worth of grants, $2 billion of which went to an LLC that just showed up from Stacey Abrams the year before and had $100 in the bank and no mission statement about what it is that they were trying to do. So your point is really well taken on that. They have created and stolen the taxpayer money in the metropolises that they represent, but then they pay off the right people. So it is that they can insulate their power.
And that's why they will never solve homelessness, because there are way too many people.
They don't even care.
Yeah, they make way too much money off the homeless crisis, especially in LA. All this money that they dedicate, they've got people that are running these nonprofits. that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be consultants or to sit on a board or to, be an executive of this. They do absolutely nothing. The best thing they can come up with there is fresh needles. Let's hand out some fresh needles, everybody.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Like LA will, and it's getting so much worse. And people say, oh no, it's homelessness is getting better. It is not. Go to Los Angeles, go to friggin' San Diego. San Diego used to be beautiful. It's a hellhole now. And I mean, San Francisco, a hellhole. Portland, a hellhole. Seattle, a hellhole. I don't know how decent people live there. I really don't understand it. Last thing I want to talk about on a very heavy day is the Cracker Barrel stuff. Now,
Yes.
I have feared that maybe the conservative side, we were becoming caricatures of ourselves by getting a little too outraged about a logo. And I thought, to the average person, this is not going to impact their life. It's kind of stupid that they would pay a marketing company to make their logo worse and less original. But now they're changing back to their old logo. And I think it's, the fact that they wasted so much money to make that is actually the travesty.
It's incredible.
The fact that even if they would make a great logo, I guess maybe I don't understand the marketing world, but I don't know how you pay millions of people to do something on like clip art or like Canva and make something just slightly different from what it already is and then charge people millions of dollars.
And Tomi, they took out the most complicated part of the logo and then just put the existing logo in a new logo. Right. It's like, how could you charge people money for that? You just erased things.
Ta-da!
Right.
But what do you think about the outrage over it? Do you think it was a little much? I mean, it worked apparently, but do you think maybe it was a little much?
I don't think it was too much. I don't think it was too little. I think it was natural. I think people were responding to a situation where they're like, hey, wait a minute. This is a place where I can get affordable food. I have a friendly waitress, and I'm going to get a half pound of Jawbreakers and a Jody Messina Christmas CD.
Yeah,
they're like,
don't forget the
need you to
trinkets.
make it woke.
Great
So here's the thing is, I don't think it's gone far enough. I think the logo, reverting to the logo, is what they want to just give the public and say, shut up and move on. What happened is we found out all this stuff from like Chris Rufo, a bunch of Outkick's done tremendous reporting on this. Cracker Barrel has been captured by this like woke corporate entity where they've been pushing DEI policy. They've had like rainbow pride rocking chairs across their stores, and they've had this
human rights campaign.
Just give me the chicken and dumplings.
That's the thing is all that needs to be removed. That CEO needs to be removed. She's part of this like horrific rash of angry liberal ladies. Like you can recognize them. They have those thick glasses. It's the same
with horn rims.
It's the same type that like it's the same type that took over Disney, ruined all of Disney movies. They go across companies in this country that, especially ones that conservatives revere. If it's something that conservatives enjoy, they get in there and they just try to shovel the money to left-wing groups. They try to make it woke. They ruin everything. She's got to go. All the DEI stuff has to go. Keep the pressure on.
What is it that Pavlich calls them? The D3s? The D3s?
The D3s.
Deranged woke white women?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I just can't imagine spending money. I mean, Cracker Barrel is based in Lebanon, Tennessee, so it's hard for me to reckon with the fact that it's Cracker Barrel itself that's doing it, but they hire these outside companies that say, no, you need to be something completely different. Probably people who are not from Tennessee, probably haven't even spent much time in Tennessee or the South, which is kind of the nostalgia that Cracker Barrel is trying to resurrect as this old country store, probably in the South. And you bring people in from LA or New York City and they're like, no, you guys need to completely change it. Well, it's because you don't understand the people here. You don't understand the company.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the point that Smug was getting at, is that we entered an era of corporate governance over the last 5 years that thankfully has come to its rightful end, of people who are just seeking out this just sort of prototype of left-wing acceptable corporate facing.
There's just a sameness to it,
right? And like the idea that you don't have a Southern dude running Cracker Barrel is crazy to me.
Crazy.
It's like you have to know who your clientele is at some level, and like I'm looking at what they're doing. I mean, the logo isn't nearly as offensive to me as everything that you listed off. That they've just been engaged in like corporate warfare off the left-hand side over the last 5 years.
And there is a reason why the same consultants are driving these companies to the same conclusion. All these consultants live in the same place. They think because they went to the meatpacking district sometime in New York, all of a sudden they're meat packers now.
Yeah.
But it's,
you know what I mean?
But it's back to what Duncan was talking about in the cyclical flow of money.
Yeah.
Right.
You hire somebody, they pay the consultant that got them hired. It's all this sort of left wing. I mean, that's the way. Look, they don't do business any better than they govern. It's terrible throughout, but they have figured out how to pay themselves for the effort.
Yeah.
And they do it in corporate America. They do it in our municipalities.
What an effort it was, too. I mean, that's some pretty wild stuff there. Even if it wasn't woke, it was just ugly and stupid. And I wonder what they're going to do now, because I was driving down the interstate here in Nashville and I saw the changed logo on a billboard and I thought, well, are they going to go take that down now? I mean, if they're going to waste money on the marketing team that ruined it, they should probably waste the money to go and bring back the old logo. I don't know what they're going to do. In the remaining few minutes, I do have to just go around the table and get your initial reaction to the Taylor Swift engagement. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, but I will tell you this. I was actually pleasantly surprised to hear President Trump comment positively. I thought this is a win. You know, he said she's a terrific person. I think, okay, this is a come together moment. And a lot of conservatives, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, they were applauding this, saying, look, you know, you got somebody who's getting married. I think it's maybe a win for conservatism. What do you guys think?
There is not a single issue that is a greater gender divide in this country than it is marriage of famous people. I don't know a single dude, and I mean this sincerely, who is like, oh my gosh, they got married? Holy smokes, that's incredible. I wonder what the ring looks like. You know, like, oh, when's the ceremony? Like, I can't wait to watch it. It goes with like royal weddings all the way down to this thing. But every single woman, including my wife, is like captivated by the whole thing. So Tomi, like, I think you can speak to this better than we can. Like, I have very close friends. When they announce their engagement, I'm like, congratulations.
Yeah, but she's a role. I mean, I would say in fairness,
Happy for you guys. When are you registered?
in fairness to Taylor Swift, I mean, she is clearly a role model to a lot of young girls, right? And so, is it a win that she's like finally tying the knot and getting married?
This is your take. This is a good take.
Is like. Yeah, I mean,
because she was like a single woman.
Yeah, right. And she wrote breakup songs and everything. And maybe instead of wallowing in the sadness of that, like, you know,
go out
there and get married. It's
There's
good
a silver lining.
Yeah.
So I have a take. This is news.
This should be
This is news you can use.
Tomi, brace yourself.
Statistically, in their professional careers, men perform better once they get married. For folks, if your fantasy football draft hasn't happened yet, last season was kind of tough for Kelce. I think Kelce's a pickup now. A guy who gets married starts putting up bigger numbers, performing better. If we hadn't done our draft, I'd grab Kelce if I could.
But not in golf.
Not in golf, demonstrably untrue.
Or Tiger. That was a different situation.
Demonstrably untrue.
Well, I think he has to, because his fiance is like a billionaire, so I think he's gotta get to work. I think that he's kind of maybe understanding. They seem like a supportive couple. Our very own Clay Travis. I know that you guys said that you can't think of a gender divide and you think men don't care. News for you: our Outkick founder Clay Travis spent 20 plus minutes on this yesterday.
Clay's in.
Like, we got to get him on the show to roast his.
He was very invested in this. He was so invested, and he was really over the moon about it. And his rationale for it was that women who are unmarried and they can't find somebody, they need to date masculine men. She dated all these wimpy guys, and then she dated a football player, and look, she kind of found her happily ever after. So for him, he's like, listen, date a masculine man and you'll find your happily ever after. He's very invested in it. You will have to ask him about it, but he spent a better part of yesterday talking about it, just so you guys know.
That's good. That's good to know. Well, it's, we're broadening our horizons here. We could talk about just about anything. Yeah, it sounds like there's a silver lining in all of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly is. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Welcome to the Fox One Fox family. We're all intermingled, and we're so happy to have you guys. Thank you for taking the time. I hope to come to DC now that it's safe, to come see you guys in studio one of these days. I would love to do that. God bless you, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you guys. All right, folks, I was going to do final thoughts today on the topic we just discussed, which was Taylor Swift, but I'm going to save those final thoughts because with everything going on in Minneapolis, it just seems maybe slightly insensitive at the moment. We covered a lot of things today, but obviously want to circle back to the tragedy in Minneapolis and thinking about those families, thinking about those kids, thinking about that community. I know we'll all join together in praying for them as we get more information. It's going to be easy to speculate and to talk politics about it. I'm sure that's going to come, but I hope we can all just take a beat to respect the people and the families that are being impacted. Thank you guys so much for joining this show today. We'll be live again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation. Please also head over to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless you all and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.